All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Disciples Table. Thank you guys for being so patient with us. Please follow along with us on social media. Instagram, we are at St. Mark Youth with Power. It's St. Mark Youth with Power. It's a long name, but you'll get it. And then also follow us on Facebook and YouTube. Please like, comment, share this video. Let's get this out to everybody that wants to see it. Again, thank you guys so much. Today, we're going to dive into something that's a little bit fun for us. We had this discussion maybe about 3 different times in 3 different places, but we figured it was a good idea for us to bring it together with everybody on social media today. I'm gonna let them introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Lewis.
My name is Rhodonna. Hi.
So today we're gonna talk about relationships, whether it be familial, friendships or acquaintances, the different levels that there is, and then also romantic love. We may even get into like what's people's love languages. Like mine is food. I think food is definitely a love language that people don't talk about, but it is a solid way to people's hearts. So we're going to talk all about that. But the first thing I want to talk about briefly is what goes into making a good friend. Yeah, let's go from there. I'm gonna try not to make this like how the other 2 episodes were, where I ask a lot of questions, but we just gonna all chat it up. But yeah, that's the first question. What goes into making a good friend?
I would say, someone that you can trust, because I feel like every relationship you have, whether it's a friendship, even relationship with your family, boyfriend, marriage, whatever, should have a steady foundation. So as far as like friendship, someone that you can trust, someone that you can, you able to, if you have any secrets that you want to tell them, you can tell them, to trust that they won't go and tell anyone else. Friendship wise, just someone that I know, like, we can talk about anything. Like, no matter what, I can tell you if you're doing something wrong that I don't like. You can tell me if I'm doing something wrong that you don't like. It's just all about having a steady foundation, because a true friend, no matter what, whether it's someone you speak to every day, all the time on the phone, or someone you may see once a year, is like we still have a connection with each other, regardless of anything else.
Yes, I do agree with what Jennifer said. My take on what makes a good friend or a good friendship, sorry. For me, what makes a good friendship is honesty, loyalty. It is a person who you can unpack with, and no matter how crazy the unpacking becomes, you guys can just have a mutual understanding of respect. It is just for me, friends, like a good friendship would be somebody who is like just a really good family member that you chose. Like, oh yeah, we're cool, yeah, like the other side of the pillow. So I would say honesty, loyalty, what is the imperfections, and just kind of just viewing the person like, no matter what happens, I got your back. We could be miles apart, but when we meet with each other, it's like, oh yeah, we miss a beat, girl, oh boy, whatever. So I think that's what, if I explain myself correctly, but I feel like that's what makes a really good friend.
I've been trying to figure out like what's the proper way to organize like the friendships that we have, like whether it's we categorize them in acquaintances, close friends, people that we know, people that we hang out with, and then like best friends. Like how do you guys like qualify who goes in what category?
I mean, well, the first thing for me, I'm always, I pay attention to a lot of people that surround me before I can even call them friends. Sometimes you have, you do put them in, different categories. Well, either you're going to be my friend or you're not my friend. That's just what it is. Like, there's no other, associates, right? But friendship wise, a best friend, all right, and it's interesting. A best friend with someone that you put as a best friend is where a lot of people won't understand why someone is your best friend, right? So you and that person have an understanding. There's something about that person that you can connect with, even on a different level that maybe other people can't. Because some people question, why is this your best friend, or how can you be best friend with this person? This person is like that. But I think everyone is so different in how they look at people to be, to consider them as their best friend. you know you have people who are there for you no matter what, who's always looking out, who's always making sure you're okay, which other people may not see it. And it's funny because I listened to my sister growing up. Like, she had a best friend who people, even to this day, from when they were kids to now, are like, I can't believe she was even your best friend. But there was a connection that they had that no one else had, and no one else will ever understand. They had an understanding, and that's what made them become best friends, and that's what made them able to just tolerate each other, where other people from the outside looking in is like, oh, how can you even deal with this person? Their attitude is like that. Just like, but everyone has their own, their own experience, or their own, however you want to say, like, what they consider their best friend to be, their own understanding of the individual that they call their best friend.
Wait, hold on. What about acquaintances though? What about acquaintances? Because we all got those people that, like, they call us their friend, but really, like, in reality, they're really acquaintances. They're not like super close friends. They're like people that you're like, oh, when I see you, it's like we're cool, but don't expect me to go out with you every time I see you. How do you qualify them? Because I know how I qualify them, but how do y'all? Oh, what's up, Joey? Um, how we're talking about how do we qualify people, how do we put people in different categories of friendships, whether it's acquaintances, people we know, what's the other one, best friends, stuff like that.
As far as an acquaintance, yeah, hey, how you doing? I see you. I may not be on the phone with you all the time. I may not tell you secrets. I may, kind of keep it cordial. I see you when we're around each other, we're cool. But I just may not have a connection with you that I may have with someone else who I consider to be a close friend. And I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because I think we all have that. We all have people who may possibly be around us that we're cool, we like them, but would we consider them to be like a close friend, a best friend? No, but I can still talk to you. I can still, hang out with you every once in a while, but you're not going to be that go-to person.
Joey, anything? Doctor? Yeah.
Y'all, first of all, y'all waited until I done ate a Triscuit. Well, I think that friends should be people, people that have your best interest in mind. This is my personal opinion. I think that what I qualify to be as a friend is someone who I can trust, someone who I can respect and respects me, someone who will also hold me accountable, and will be honest with me if I'm wrong or if I'm out of line. Someone that I can be myself with, and vice versa. There is a certain level of a mutual relationship that, like, where the same things are kind of afforded to each other on the same sides. That's what I consider to be a friend. Now, an acquaintance is maybe someone that, you are friendly with, you are cool with, but they are not necessarily at the level of friendship that you would consider. I kind of think about it as what was the name of that movie? Is it Meet the Fockers? Where the father, Robert De Niro, he was like, you're not a part of the circle of trust.
Yeah.
Trust, and this is you. and you are not in the circle of trust, it's kind of like that. You know, friends are the people that are in your circle of trust, so to speak. And then there are other levels of circles outside of that major circle, you know, where they may not be like they may be totally cool, but they may not get a certain level of access to who you are and what you are on, you know. And then you have, you know, just people that you just know here and there, they're further out, you know what I'm saying? You have to decide who you want those friends and those acquaintances to be. But my hope is that if you have a real friend, someone who's going to hold you down, who's going to be honest with you, and who you can do the same thing back to. Because the other side of it is that while someone can be a friend to you, the question is, are you being a friend to them as well? So that's why I said there's a certain level of mutuality that's going on. So that's all I got.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like for every relationship there has to be some, like you said, some level of back and forth, like give and take. Like I give you this, you give me back the same energy, so that way we both know we're on the same page. Um, so wait, hold on. Look, you got something else to say? Well, hold on, because I would say it's like a back and forth thing. Like we both have to understand that we're both giving the same amount of energy in this friendship. We're both going back, giving the same amount of I want to say give and take, but I don't feel like that's the right word for it.
Well, I get what you're trying to say, but you have to be careful about the language, because I feel like what ends up happening sometimes is that people say that I established this connection or relationship because I'm looking to get something from you. And not saying that a friend is not there, or a close, you know, relationship, you don't get things. There aren't benefits to being close with someone because you do get things out of it. But if you are strictly in the relationship for the sake of getting a specific thing and nothing more, outside of also equally wanting to pour back into the person, you kind of have to question what the relationship really is, you know. And vice versa, there are some people who may want to befriend you, and they only want to befriend you because of maybe who you know, or who you're connected to, or what you can do for them, and they don't actually know how to reciprocate. Or sometimes they do certain things, you know, to say I'm friendly, I'm providing these things, and I'm expecting you to give me something in return as well. That's a dangerous place to be as well, because the idea of a real friend is that though there are benefits to being a friend and access, you are not there to be a friend solely for the sake of getting something from that person. You know, the idea is that you are there to because you are actually traveling down the same road, so to speak, in however metaphorical way you want to speak, to think about it. You are going down the same path, and you hold each other accountable. You're good company to each other as you travel down this road of life, a career, or whatever it may be that you're doing. And along the road, they don't let you fall, and you don't let them fall, so to speak. And will there be some gives and takes that come into that? Yes, but that should not be the sole focus of the friendship itself.
And it's funny because you could always, it's funny when you growing up, you have like all these people you called your best friend. So like in elementary school, you had a best friend, and in junior high school, there was another best friend. And it's always amazing. Like, I don't know if this ever happened to you guys, but I've had where it's been where I had someone who I was really close with as a best friend. I consider them to be a best friend. And the older we got, I start to really know who this person was. They was like telling me things and showing me, and I'm like, wait, what? Like, I don't. And it was kind of like, okay. And then like the last draw was when we like literally was about to fight. Because I think when you get to that point, it's kind of like, all right. And I mean, not just with words, like physical. So, like, I don't know, have y'all ever experienced where it's like you thought someone was your best friend, or they were just your best friend at the time, and then you find out some stuff, you're like, wow, you're that type of person. Nah, I can't get down with you with that. Because that's kind of like, wow. It was a shock. It definitely was a shocker for me.
Well, you know, I've definitely had some people who, you know, were friends with me on, you know, one level, you know, particularly the school friends. We were supposed to be like, cool, you know, that was my boy, that was my man's. And then, um, you know, as we went to the next levels of school and, you know, life, you know, we kind of drifted apart. You know, in some cases there were some, rubs, so to speak. But, sometimes, they moved on into another area of life, and I moved on to another area. And not necessarily in your case, from my experience, but more so it might have been a situation where it's like, it wasn't that we weren't cool anymore. It's just that we found a whole new tribe for the space that we started to occupy in that season. I think about, a friend of mine from middle school, and we ended up going to high school together. While in middle school, we hung out all the time. We were totally cool. And then we got to high school, and even though we went to the same high school together, they were doing their thing over here, with their friends, and then I was over here with mine. And even though we came in contact, we were totally cool. It wasn't that same tightness, and so we kind of drifted our own, in our own ways. And I think friendship is very complicated because, again, I wouldn't necessarily look at it as a black and white thing. I would look at it as a spectrum of colors, or levels, so to speak. Because even then, we do it by having the term best friend versus a friend. There's someone who gets even more access than someone else. So yes, I would look at it as spectrums. Fact of the matter is, there are some people who I may not hardly speak to but once in the blue moon. But when we do catch up, it's like nothing ever changed. You know what I'm saying? Despite the fact that we didn't. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're not friends. It just means that, while we are going down the same path, we're just doing it in our own little bubbles along the way. And when we do collide or when we do catch up, it's totally cool. Like I said, with this same friend, every once in a while I may hit him up, he may hit me up, hey, what's going on, whatever. But it's not like I'm on the phone gabbing, or I throw a party and I'm like, yo, come through. It's not like that, Now, it doesn't mean that I wouldn't. It just means that we're in different spaces now, and while we're still cool, and I would still consider a friend, just not on the same level as we once were. And that's okay too. I do think that friendship should be looked upon as something that has the ability to be fluid and to understand where those levels are. Now, you also have to make sure that you do, this is my personal opinion, I think we do tend to have a tendency to model things like marriage, so to speak. And so it's like, if we aren't cool the way we once were, and that fire's gone, and we ain't friends no more, and it's just all over. And it's like, that's not that kind of relationship. You know what I'm saying? We have the capacity to have many friends. We're supposed to have one spouse, unless you go in the philosophy of the whole open relationship thing, which is a whole nother world and a can of worms. That's why it's not that I'm saying it's okay. One thing, I'm just acknowledging that it's out there, unless depending on how you think. My point is,
I got you,
that there are differences between those relationships, and I think we have a tendency a lot of times to model our friendships as if they are marriages, and they're not exactly the same. I don't know.
Wait, okay, but wait, I have a question. Okay, so, right? What if you have a best friend of the opposite sex, right? And you get into a relationship, and then it becomes.
Are you asking if we get a relationship with the best friend or with somebody else?
Well, no, not with someone else, because I know that causes a lot of issues too, as far as like if you have a best friend who is the opposite sex, and then you get into a relationship with someone.
Well, I can speak for this one because one of my closest friends is a female, but every girl I've ever dated, either in college, in college or outside of, they all have known, because I'm very honest and upfront about it, because I never want anybody to see me like texting them repeatedly and go, wait, who you texting? Why are you texting them so much? I always like to be upfront, and then I say, hey, like, do you want to meet my friend? Because if this is gonna be a real thing, and they're my friends, and they're gonna stay around, I want you to be aware of who my friends are, so that way there's never is a question as to what I'm doing. I like to be upfront. Like, I'll tell you, maybe not the first couple of days, but after a while, you'll start hearing me tell stories about college or whatever, and you start hearing me, talk about different things that happen with my friends or whatever. And I'm gonna let you know up front, this is my best friend. This is who they are. I have a couple of them. I'm gonna let you know who they are. But I don't, just because I don't want there to be any problems. I don't want there to be an issue as to, that whole situation or whatever.
I feel like so being in a relationship, coming into a relationship and you have a best friend who is the opposite sex, I feel like that should be a conversation with the person you're talking to. Like, I have a best friend, how does that make you feel? Is the opposite. Well, I don't know, because that's a tricky question just due to me and this other person has been friends, and who are you to come in out of nowhere and to not to sound like me, but we'd be friends. Like, there's nothing in a relationship with you because I've known this person. If being able to trust you, then it's going to be, you're always going to hit something where it's, we're just friends. But also the person who you are in a relationship has to display like, actually no, because I feel like even if you do go into a relationship, if it's a fresh relationship, I think not bring the girl, like bring the opposite, bring the person around, but just ensure them like, there's nothing, especially if it's someone you really like, ensure them like, this is my friend. There's no, if you have any questions, concerns, I understand, or, if they might feel some type of way, because some people come into relationships very jaded and having their own idea of, what should and should not be. So I think there should be a conversation where this is my best friend, we've been friends for years, blah, 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 blah. Nothing has ever happened or whatever. Just make sure the person, but also that other person has to trust you. And if they can't trust you, then is the person worth it? I'm leaving. I'm out. I'm muting myself. No, I'm kidding.
I actually agree with Rhodonna. I can speak to all of these different things for many different reasons. Unlike Josh, I was the person who, if I dated you, doesn't, and, I've always had, female friends, and that's just what they were. I never crossed the lines or anything like that, because they were my friend and that's all it was. And there were some women that I dated who were totally not threatened by, the fact that I had women friends, but then there were some who were totally threatened by that because of whatever experiences that they had in their own life. Now, my personal belief, still to this day, though it comes with some better understanding now that I've been through some things, is that it is your responsibility to manage your jealousy, not mine, number one. At the same time, if you are in a relationship, I'm learning more and more the importance of making sure that your good is not viewed upon as evil. And what I mean by that is that I was a person who had the tendency to be like, I don't have to explain myself because I'm not doing dirt. I've never cheated. I've never done any foul stuff like that. So I don't have to explain anything to you about who this person is, or I don't have to, make you feel comfortable in any kind of way because you should just trust me. And I realize now that probably wasn't the best idea because, though it is one person, I still believe that it is a person, is any one person's responsibility to manage their own insecurities, jealousies, or things like that. I do think that if you're going to be in a relationship with someone, it is your job to provide a certain level of safety, a safe space for them so that they can feel comfortable being with you. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be their crutch and that you have to kowtow to every little thing, but it does mean that you need to at least provide, at least on a basic level of established trust by showing them everything is cool. And I had to learn that the hard way, despite the fact that I wasn't doing anything. So that's what I'll say about that. So if a person is basically, telling you, well, you can't have, male friends and they're a male, it's kind of like, well, you knew what it was before. Why are you all of a sudden flipping the script now? We were friends. You know, up until this point, nothing happened. Like, why? What's the big deal? That's their insecurity. That's, you know, you have to ask yourself, is it that you are not providing enough safety for them or security for them? Or is it that they are so insecure that they need to work that out for themselves? Is that the work that they need to do for themselves? So that's what I'll say about that. Now, speaking about you know, I had never up until this point dated any of my female friends. It is only now that I am currently dating my best friend of a long, long time. Wasn't looking to actually be in a relationship with her at all. Wasn't even thinking about her. And then things just shifted. There is some interesting shifts that come with that because, you know, there is the thought that, well, because you have been best friends, there are certain things that you take for granted because you assume that you should just know. You should just understand certain things. And the fact of the matter is, again, different relationship dynamics. And there's still adjustments that need to be made even within there. Things that you didn't have to think about before, you now have to consider. And things that, you know, you're trying to make sense of can be very awkward. And, you know, because now you get to see another level of the person. You know, as a friend, there's certain things you never have to think about, you know, when connecting with a person. But once you shift into, you know, okay, this is my boyfriend, this is my girlfriend, or whatever, now all of a sudden there's new considerations, and now that person gets to see an even deeper level of you, of who you are. And sometimes that isn't always the most, or it's sometimes it puts you in an even more vulnerable place than you ever have been before. So, you know, you have to think about how all of that factors in as well. You know what I'm saying?
So wait, so would you say, because I've heard this from many people, do you feel like titles changes things, like the title? So how you go from a best friend to now the girlfriend, does that change? Because in my personal experience, I've always felt like, okay, I've dated a best friend of a couple of best friends, whatever. I've dated friends, and I went into the relationship treating them exactly the same. Never changed who I was, never changed, because as a friend, I was able to tell you everything. Like, everything was, the only difference is you may not have been doing let's have like a night out or whatever. I mean, as a friend, you probably was, but it was on a different level. But as far as like, sometimes I feel like titles change things. I know how to keep it the same, but I've experienced where people have changed, like, oh, now you're the girlfriend, so now I have to not tell you this, or I can't do this around you, or, you know, how does that work?
All right. So this is my personal opinion. And, you know, people may disagree with me, and that's fine. It's just my personal opinion. For me, a title is nothing more than a symbol of what you know, that you choose to adhere to. Fact of the matter is, it's going to be what it's going to be, whether you have the title or not. I think that it helps I think titles are helpful because they make things clear about where you are and where you stand.
Right.
But they don't necessarily make you do one thing or the other. It's how you feel about the person and what you think it is about the nature of the relationship that changes how you move in it. You know, so if you are used to being in a relation, or if you are used to hiding things in your romantic relationships, chances are, even if you withheld nothing because the person was the homie, once that switches up, because you're conditioned to think that, well, this is my girl and you got to hold certain things because this, that, and the third, well, then chances are you're going to do that because you're used to functioning in a particular way, not because it necessarily the title changed. It's because you chose to see that person in a new light. And so, you know, that's just the way it goes, title or not. Some people are really, you know, but also titles are it's a slippery slope with those things, because while I do believe that they are symbols, I think symbols are also very powerful, and they also tell us a lot of things about ourselves and each other. You know, where if you are trying to avoid putting the symbol of a particular thing, like as a girlfriend or a boyfriend, and then you have to ask yourself, well, why? are you not trying to put that title on if that in actuality is what it is? And if it's not, then there needs to be a conversation to say, well, what exactly is this, so that you are clear? Because I'm thinking that we're moving here and we're clearly not, because you're not even ready to adhere to said title if that's an actual, if we are checking all the boxes underneath it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So yeah, I mean, that's the way I think about it. It doesn't matter whether you have a title of this, that, or the third, because it's, the question is what adjustments have, how do you see the person, whether there's a title on it or not? Because sometimes things can change even if you don't ever put a title of girlfriend. You know, what if, all of a sudden, things start slipping here and there, then all of a sudden it's like, well, then you clearly know that there's a shift, but there's no how many times have shifts happen and things get weird and awkward, and simply because people didn't have the conversation of what it is.
Right.
Or they may have put a title on it, but they didn't talk about what not title, but what that means, what the nature of the relationship now means. Like, what are the responsibilities or the expectations within that relationship now as it has changed? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So you could be like, okay, well, because some people might do the opposite. They might say, well, you knew me to be this way before, I'm not going to change now, but because the nature of the relationship changed, you're expecting certain things to be different. The title is just the cover of the book, so to speak. The book is still the book without the cover.
Gems. I love it. No, I don't like. I was just like, yes, come through, gems. I definitely agree. I feel like, well, me personally, I've been in a relationship where there wasn't a title, and the relationship worked, but then I had to step back and look. No. Sometimes titles add pressure. Sometimes when you put a title on things, that's when people have this expectation of, from person to person, I've come to realize things vary. You may have a view on this and I may have a view on something totally different, but sometimes I feel like, for me, when a title is placed, sometimes it just gets really weird, because now it's the pressure of, what is the expectation of being a girlfriend, and what is this, and you're just like, you're flustered, and you're like, well, how did we get in this awkward situation? So I feel like sometimes titles, even though it's a good thing, sometimes it adds pressure where pressure doesn't need to be added. And that's my
I don't know. I never felt pressure. That's the crazy thing. I never felt the pressure.
Well,
I've always, if it was like a friendship going into a relationship, and I don't know.
I don't know. I've never dated a friend for several different reasons. But I feel
gets
like
complicated real fast.
super, and like I have a lot of great friendships that I was just like, and we've had those conversations with each other, all my friends, well, most of them, and we've all said, like, if that were to happen, like, I don't know, like, I know I could say for me, I was worried about losing a friend if the relationship didn't work out. That's the main thing that I literally, like, we had this conversation, and I had a conversation with a couple other people when I was in college. Everybody's afraid that when the relationship ends, the friendship that you have with that person will be gone. So that was like the issue that I had. But back to Rhodonna's thing really quickly, DTR, defining the relationship, is super important, because it helps relieve any stress or any pressure that you can have about being in a relationship with whoever. To me personally, like, if we sit down and we talk about, especially in the talking phase, which I want to talk about, the talking phase and getting to know each other phase, or whatever, the dating phase, we will, like, that's the point where we can talk about, like, things that bother us, things that annoy us sometimes in relationships, things that's happened that we're like, that we want to be honest and upfront about, that things that we won't tolerate, things that is not acceptable for us. Like, if we have those conversations beforehand, or even in the beginning of the relationship, and we just say, like, this is the issue that I've had, this is something that I really trying to work through, not just in myself, something I'm trying to work through in relationships. This is something that I'm not fully comfortable with, that I want to make you aware of. So that way, if you do that, if you see me react in a way, it's because you triggered something that I told you I don't like. or I told you that I got an issue with. I feel like if we do that, then it should make you're still gonna have your arguments or whatever, but I feel like it'll take the pressure off of trying to be the perfect girlfriend or perfect boyfriend or whatever. I don't think there is such a thing as that, but that's just me.
Well, while I agree with you wholeheartedly, the rub really is how many of us really are that self-aware? Where you got to think about how you dated and what you learned from a teenager into your early 20s to your mid and later 20s, and then for some of us into the 30s. You know a whole lot of things as you go along, and you gain more experiences and you realize some things better. You learn more about yourself as you go along. Some people do not take the time to actually spend time with themselves to be self-aware or to even be able to have the words to be able to describe what it is that they're feeling or what they're thinking. They won't be able to they aren't always equipped to express what's really going on. And so while it would be nice to have someone who knows how to clearly communicate, this is where my triggers are, this, that, and the third, in a way that makes sense, in a way that's holistic and clear. I would say many people, especially nowadays, don't know how to do that. Even when they think they know how to do it, they don't. And as far as you said something before. Yes, the whole losing the friend thing, like that is a real thing. And there's something that I had to think about, because that was one of my concerns with, once I realized all of a sudden I have, my feelings have changed. I was like, I don't want to say anything, because the last thing I want is to start something and then it all falls apart, and now I'm out of a best friend. You know what I'm saying? And that was always a concern. But then I had to kind of start thinking about something over time. And because while I felt the pressure to everything needs to work perfectly and everything needs to be this way, I kind of had to ask myself, well, why is it that I believe that it's even going to fail in the first place? You know what I'm saying? What about what is it about either relationships or myself in relationships or about people do I believe where there won't be real success, in it? And I had to kind of start addressing that within myself as to why I see things in that particular way, because that'll make you also feel like things will fall apart, and then you're out of a best friend. Why do you think it's going to fall apart before you even started it?
What's crazy? Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just weird. But I've always felt like if we had a solid foundation as a friendship, a real friendship, that even if we moved forward into a relationship, I personally always felt that if the relationship, for whatever reason, it just doesn't work out, that we can still be friends. Now, I've always felt like that. Now, has it always been like that? No. Like, I, because I felt like if I was your friend before, I can still be your friend. We just not going to be on that level anymore, but I can still be your friend. But evidently for them, it just, no, we can't be friends. Or they try to be your friend, but not really. You can kind of see a big difference. But I don't know. I've always felt like if we had a solid foundation as a friendship, like as friends, then that foundation shouldn't be able to be totally broken, right? It could shake up a little bit, but it won't fully be broken. This is what I believe, but I don't think I've ever really experienced it. But I've always felt like I can still be your friend no matter what. Like, regardless. I mean,
I feel like it depends. I feel like it depends on how invested you were in that relationship.
Yeah,
And
I feel
from this is from my perspective. If I was fully invested, and you were like, I'm not really feeling it or whatever, you could say, oh well, we could still be friends. I'm gonna take a break from you before I come back and be your friend.
that's what I was about to say.
I
Like,
need time away.
you need time,
to be like, have my moment, have my feelings be hurt, and then like let that friendship come back to what it was
I'm not saying
before.
like right away.
No, but
Yeah,
I'm
but
also
no, go
right.
ahead, Rhodonna. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I was piggybacking off what you're saying. Like, I feel like if we do decide, so there are two things. There's some people, even though they say, yeah, we can be friends or whatever, but there's some people who are not mature enough to say, well, this is not working for me. They'll choose to string it along. And you're like, hello, emotions, feelings, come on now. They'll just string it along. Like, you don't want this. So why are you stringing it along? So I feel like a maturity there. And then also I feel like even if we can't work, I feel like time, like you're gonna have to give me some time to like, because there are old things that just die hard. You're like, ooh, because they know you on that, just like not just personally, they know you outside of just friendship and whatever y'all decide to do within your relationship. So they know just certain things about you. So I feel like time, you have to take time. Just take time by yourself, work it out, come back if you feel like it's worth coming back to.
If it's worth, yeah. So then the next thing is I want to really, because I've seen so many videos on this whole thing. Can we break down what the steps to relationships are? Because we have people saying that there's the talking phase, then there's the dating phase, then there's the now we're together relationship phase, then the engagement, and then there's the marriage one, right? And then you have people who put a time frame on all of that. I can say for me personally, I've had this conversation. I don't put time frames on anything, just because you never know. So to say like, oh, it has to be in this amount of years, has to be this amount of time, I feel like that doesn't really apply to everybody. So this might not apply to everybody, but I really want to know, like, do y'all see validity in this whole thing of like, there's the talking, the dating, then there's relationship, or is it just like the talking and dating is all in one, and then the relationship is a whole nother category? How do y'all look at this whole thing?
Well, I still think you need to learn who you're dealing with. You need to know who they are,
True.
where they come from, who's their fit. Listen, because once you
True.
guys come together as one, that's a whole lot. Like that's no, that's I mean I've never experienced it, but it's a whole lot, and you just have to know. Because I watch people, I pay very close attention to the people who are in relationships around me, who are not, who've been married, who's divorced. I've seen it all, and I'm like, okay, like you guys don't know who you're dealing with. Y'all just jumping into things. And I'm not saying that, and it's funny because if you think about it, like when our parents were younger and then their parents were younger, they, I don't recall any of them being in a like having this long drawn out, boyfriend, girlfriend dating stage. And I don't recall. And then you look at them now, they're 30, 40, 50 years in, 60 years in our generation. You got to know. Like, I just feel like it's just a lot. It's a lot.
I feel like back in the days when you had people who were married, who dated, I feel like times were different back then. Times where, look, for better or worse, we gonna do this. There's no such thing as divorce. We gonna go down this path. And you're like, all right. But I feel like because we look at past generations, I feel like because times were different and we think, well, for women, I know from my perspective, when I talk to different women, they're like, oh, by 30, I'm supposed to be married with 15 kids. And you're like, sis, whoa, how you planning the whole wedding? Like, how are you so, like, slow down? Like, times are different. Like, so for me personally, when I've talked to women, there's just like, oh, I'm by 30, I'm supposed to be married. By 30, like they have this, I'm just speaking from the woman's perspective, it's just time blocking. You're like, then they do all of, like, say they are successful in getting married really early, at in their 30s, and then you wind up getting divorced because you planned something that you aren't really prepared for. Like, you can't say I want to be married at this age, and you have to think of all that comes with marriage. You're dealing with just one person, you're talking to that one person, and you have to deal with their ins and outs, whether you like it or not. And I feel like when you put like when you go through marriage, you have to not just know that person, but you have to deal with that person for it to work. Like, I feel like generation now are not willing to work they're just willing, oh, I want the dream, because we're so quick to go like this on Instagram. We see these ideas, oh, I want this, ooh, like, and you're like, you don't
Relationship
know what it
goals,
took for them.
nah.
Right, but you don't know what it took for them to get there. You don't know their backstory unless you sit down and go, well, blase, and you have that conversation. But outside of that, we're so quick to think, oh, if I could just get married, it'll just get like, it'll just be perfect, and it's not. People who were married back in the days, like, I've heard some interesting stories. It's like, yeah, my wife got crazy. I said, say they backhand, and you're like, whoa. So I feel like from generation to generation, this is just different. We are the generation, we just want it quick, fast, and in a hurry. We're not willing to sit down and take time to just kind of like take things from the people who were married and understand what were their growing pains when they were together. Like, what were the things that you struggled with? What are the things that, even when you got up one morning, you're like, I don't really want to be around this person right now, but what pushed you to be successful? And that's my take. Sorry.
This is an interesting question. I think that I don't think that there's any one right way to do it when it comes to marriage, because I mean, maybe this is not worth mentioning, maybe it has nothing to do with what we're saying, but think about how many ways marriage is conceived across the world in different cultures and how they make those things work. There are some people who have been in successful, satisfying, long lasting marriages that were arranged, and I'm not saying that that's necessarily, the way to do it, or anything like that. What I'm saying is that that's just proof into it that this one way that we speak of saying, well, this is the model, isn't the only way to make it work and to make it last. I think what's important is to be clear about why you are taking said steps that you are taking within your relationship process. If you aren't taking advantage of that process and getting the most out of them, it doesn't matter what you do. You're setting yourself up for failure. Did that make sense? You know what I mean? Like, how can I say this? The reason why you have a quote unquote talk phase is because it's the initial point to get to know a person, right? Then once you start dating the person, what are the phases? I don't know what the phases are. What are the phases?
So there's the talking, then there's the dating.
Okay, let's stop there.
Okay.
So you got the dating phase, and now you get to see, how you're being courted or how you will court, however way, you start to see how this person is. Number one, do their actions line up with their words? What do you observe of the person outside of what is being told of you? There are many people who can talk a good game, and then when you see them in action, it's something completely different. So dating gives you the chance to see where things where the trouble areas are, where the good areas are, so to speak. What's the next phase?
Relationship.
Oh, relationship. Give me just give me all of the phases so that I'm clear about this now, because I think I'm about to screw up what I'm saying out here, so I'm all over the place.
Talking, dating, relationship, engagement, marriage.
All right, cool. All right, so the way I'm looking at it is like, all right, talking phase. Just so I'm clear, I'm sorry about that, y'all.
Oh, no, it's because you just said cool. Mom hates when I say that. So
that's because you always say it. That's why.
Well, I just wanted to prove that I wasn't the only one.
I don't do it nearly as much as you do. You be on that cool. Anyway. So, the talking phase is to get to know the person. The introduction, you get as much information as possible. The dating phase is to find out if you even are interested in the person in the first place. How about that? The relationship phase, you start to see, all the real truths. And you guys can find out if you two even work well together. Are there areas that will work or will not work between you two, and to be honest about that. Should you pass, I think a lot of people are so caught up on getting to the marriage phase that they don't take time to be aware in the phases that they're in. So some people have taken every one of those steps and still didn't get it right because they didn't take time to figure out all the things that they need to figure out, or they chose to ignore certain warning signs that were there all along, but they were so focused over here, they weren't present in the moment. And I think many of us have been guilty of that in some regard. We're so busy trying to get things working over here that, we're ignoring all this other stuff. I've been guilty of it myself in my own, past relationships and things like that. When you get into the engagement phase, the idea is that y'all preparing to move to the next phase. You decided on, that you want to be with this person wants to be with you. Y'all are setting things up and preparing for that. I would put personally the engagement and the marriage phase kind of into each other. I feel like the engagement space is like that in between liminal space, so to speak, where you're going from one place to the next, from dating, from relationships into, courting relationships into marriage. You know what I'm saying? But I think what it comes down to is, why do you do what you do? And are you getting out of the processes what you need? Sometimes it may take longer depending on who you are and who they are. Sometimes you may be able to see everything you need up front in a particular way. You can move to this thing. So I can't say that there's a time frame. I do agree with Josh that when he says, there isn't really a set time frame. Absolutely. At the same time, while you're saying that, you better make sure that you're clear about what you're doing, because if not, you can easily make a mess. The idea is that those phases are put there in place to afford you the opportunity to really be clear about the decision that you're about to make in the end.
I also want to say, before anybody starts dating, go to therapy, because there's some things that we carry from home into relationships, and I'm guilty of it. Not putting my business out there, but just things that I've seen in my household, and I'm like, so this is normal, okay. And then when I go out into the world, that's not normal, or not that it's not normal, it is my perception of it. And then you meet someone else, and then you're like, oh, so that's not. I feel like, you have to first heal. Like, there are things that I'm a firm believer that people sometimes carry trauma from home or from past relationships. I feel like take time to definitely unpack before you invest into another. Like, we carry mama's hurt and we carry papa's hurt, and we like, well, why can't I? And then you're realizing, I'm carrying all the things I learned from my household into this relationship, and it didn't work with my mama and my father. But I feel like sometimes we have to just for ourselves. That's what I was feeling in my heart to say. Like, sometimes we gotta heal ourselves, or just kind of unpack our issues. Like, I think sitting down with yourself and really, like, some things that people, like, if you have people who you are afforded to, who will keep it real with you and be like, look, you do, and not be malicious about it, but just kind of like, if you are in a relationship, whether it be friendship, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever kind of relationship, and they can honestly, you do this in whatever manner, and blah 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 blah. You kind of step back and kind of just realize, why do I do what I do? Because I've, during this quarantine, have sat down with myself and like, I find this very interesting that I do, and I can imagine what someone else will feel. Or I was afforded the opportunity to talk to people who I've been really cool with, and they're like, I've just been, people have been dropping gems, and I'm kind of like, I like, whatever. So I feel like we have to sometimes unpack ourselves, because sometimes we are our worst enemy.
But
I
that's
agree.
definitely the reason why you should be whole before you even get into something. You should make sure you're whole. Like, I've heard people say as well, in that stage when you're single, if you get to the point where you're happy and single, then it could be time. It's time that if you decide to be with someone, that you're good. Because there's a lot of times, like, we're single and we're going through so much, or oh, I'm afraid to be alone. Well, why are you afraid to be alone? Like what's like you said, Rhodonna, like dealing with issues, whether it's from home or childhood, whatever issues that you need to work out to do that so you can become whole. So now when you do become in a relationship, you do get into that phase of a relationship, you won't be bringing on so much baggage where now your baggage is being put on the person that you're with because they're carrying their stuff as well as you and your stuff.
Um,
But I,
hmm,
but I also feel like some parts of it is because I feel like sometimes it's accountability. Like sometimes we like to blame the other person a lot. Like, oh, you did this to me, and you're like, did I do? Did I? So I
So
feel like, yeah, go ahead.
no,
Sorry,
you
go ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead. You feel like?
No, I just feel like sometimes, uh, we have to be accountable for things that we do sometimes too, because we can always talk about this person did this to me, but what happened? Like, where did it go crazy? You know,
Uh,
that's all.
yeah. I mean,
I don't know if I was staying on topic. I'm sorry. I
I
kind of
wish
went
our
left.
resident, counselor was here at this point in time, because she would totally correct me if I'm wrong
she
or
so
point out some things.
she's actually sitting in front of me. Whether or not she'll speak, we'll see. But she's sitting.
Hi.
I just say hi, ma.
Hey, Mo.
All right. Go ahead, Joey.
So here's my my thoughts about it all. You know, um, because we are human, and because we experience, we're imperfect, and even if you come from the what would be considered one of the best of homes and family dynamics and situations like that, facts are you're still gonna have some kind of issue or some kind of something to work out. Like that's just because unfortunately we uh how can I say this? There's a I think this totally applies that whole idea of, you know, made in the image of man, so to speak. It's like you are literally perpetuating whatever imperfect flaws that go along. Some are, you know, I don't know how scientific it may be, but I believe some things, some habits and things are genetic. That's my personal opinion, my personal think. I'm thinking about it. But then there are some things that are conditioned in ways that we don't even realize they are, and it's not always overt. It isn't always because a traumatic situation happened and now I'm this way. Sometimes it's just on how we're reared, and the worldview that maybe our family has or our environment has, and we're shaped according to those different things. Either way, the point is, and also how we process that, um, how we make sense of the world around us, and the choices that we make as a result. They aren't always perfect, and they aren't always going to chide well with every other person because we all come from different walks of life. We all have different experiences. We have different family dynamics. We are all different people. We have our own personality. So there's so many different things that play into who we are, who we become, and the choices that we make. Fact of the matter is, everybody has something to work out. The end. Furthermore, I'm also going to say that chances are, if you're a human being, you're going to be working out whatever you need to work out for the rest of your life. Doesn't mean that it's going to be that one thing all the time. Sometimes it might be this one thing that you just can't get over. You know, it may be. But then there are some things that, you know, you're ever growing, you're ever changing. And then sometimes as you grow and change, you realize there's another issue that you didn't see that was always there, or you just develop a whole new thing that wasn't there before. And all of a sudden you're like, wait, what in the world is this? And now you have to adjust to where you are in whatever phase of life you're in. And to see how all of those things kind of, you know, plays part. Correct me if I'm wrong, in-house counselor, but
she was agreeing with everything you were saying.
yes,
Because then
killing it
even
out
when
here.
you were talking about growing, she was saying evolving, and then you said growing, or you know, continuing to grow. And she was like, "See, exactly. That's what I was going
Okay,
to say."
good. I
So
got the cosign from the counselor, and I'm good out here. Anyway, uh, um, the fact of the matter is, there's always going to be something that you're working out. My mother, my mother told me something a long time ago when I was young and I had first started dating. She says, she said, everybody got problems. you got to be able to know which problems you're willing to deal with. And I've come to find as I get older, that's an absolute fact. Everybody got something that they working out. You have to know, number one, what you can deal with, what you have the capacity to deal with, but also you have to know what you're willing to deal with. They are not the same. Some people want to really be there for some serious things and just don't have the ability, the tools, the capacity to handle it. And then vice versa. Sometimes you have the capacity, but you're just not here for it. So you have to know both of them. Can you handle it? Do you even want to handle it? You know what I'm saying? And are you prepared to do so? So when it comes to choosing a partner, I dare say it's not so much about saying, well, make sure that you're all the way whole first, because I don't think we'll ever fully be all the way whole. I think we're always ever pressing towards excellence and towards perfection as we go on. We're pressing to be better and better with each stage, and we might be whole from a particular thing, but all the way whole in every perfected way. Yeah, I think that will continue as we continue to keep living and moving on. So I think it's about finding someone who, whose values, issues, whatever, it's kind of, how do I say this? You have to know what you need and what you need to see in order to stay inspired to even be with the person in the first place. Is my thoughts about it. In other words, you could have somebody who's been through so much drama, and if they really recognize that they've been through it and they try to manage it, do what they can to manage it, and they're constantly working on it, you might be able to work with that person versus someone who has the same situations, but is always like either lashing out or reaching out to someone else or expecting someone else to be their crutch, so to speak, or to take care of it or, carry it along with them. There's this book that a good friend of mine, who was also a counselor, referred to me. It's called Boundaries. I cannot remember the author's name. And they describe, they talk about how important it is to be aware of your boundaries and to make sure that people respect those boundaries. And a lot of times, many of our issues come from not being clear about where our boundaries are to other people. We let them cross it and then we mad afterwards. But the way they described it, they talked about the idea they use actual biblical verses, and I cannot remember which ones they use off the top of my head. But they were saying basically that though the word burdens is used in two different sections in the Bible, I believe, all the Bible scholars, y'all can check that. But where one idea is bearing another's burdens, so to speak, I believe they were saying that word burdens there is almost like meaning almost like a boulder. That's something that one person cannot bear by themselves. So we are supposed to help each other to lift those things that are way beyond our natural ability to carry. But then there was another one of, bearing one's own burdens, something like that. I'm paraphrasing hard because I cannot remember what was said. But basically, they described that word for burdens to be almost like the word cargo. And the idea of you can look at cargo as something that, you can carry, almost like a backpack or a suitcase or something like that. That's your responsibility. That's your cargo. You carry your own backpack and do what you got to do for yourself. And I think a lot of times we don't understand the differences between those, whether we are the people who want to be a helper to someone or whether we are the ones that are in need and are looking for others to be of help to us. We always get those wires crossed. And so while, some people might get mad because, well, they're not helping me this, or they're not, they know that I'm going through this, that, and the third. How come they're not helping me? Well, that's your responsibility, not mine. That's for you to work out. That's your stuff. Get that together for you. Then, when it's something bigger, then that's when you should expect somebody, but you have to be clear about what that all is. And I think in a relationship, it really comes down to that situation of understanding what you can deal with, whose burdens do you have the capacity, and also the willingness to be able to deal with. And that was long-winded, but yeah.
Yeah, no. I'm gonna say this part, and then I'm gonna move on to the next topic or question or whatever. But I think the thing is like going back to what Jem was saying, really what everybody was saying. I think the thing is that if you learn to love you first and be happy and comfortable with you by yourself, then you're like, I think that is more important than trying to become your full whole self. Not discounting therapy, not discounting any other form of, checking in on yourself, trying to become more aware of who you are. But I think if you learn how to love you before you try to love anybody else, it'll help you out. It'll help you understand like what your aim, what your vision is, what your goal or your intention is. Going back to define the relationship, like what is your actual intention in this whole thing? There's a book that I started reading. I suck at reading, so it's taking me longer. By Pastor Mike Todd. The first chapter is really all I read so far. I'll probably read it later on. But in the first chapter, he literally talks about before the person and taking aim and really trying to figure out like what's your vision, what's your focus, what is the actual purpose of this whole thing that you're trying to get into or that you want. Whether it's a friendship, whether it's a relationship, whether it's family, whatever it is, what is your purpose? What is your vision for this whole thing? What are you looking for the end goal to be for yourself? Are you ready for marriage? I know I'm not. So I think the thing is we have to go back to one, learning how to love yourself and really understanding the purpose and the vision for your relationship. Moving past that really quickly, I think the next thing is, I think I had this conversation with Joey, maybe, I don't know, right before I went to college or maybe while I was in college. I don't know. But it was the 5 love languages. Was
I co-signs on that book all day.
I never read it, but I know we talked about it. Joey, if you remember what the 5 love languages are, I said a 6th one, which is food. I think that's a real love language that people don't talk enough about. That's just me. 14 pounds I've
I
gained.
think my girlfriend might actually agree with you on that one.
Thank you. See, I know I'm not the only one that thinks.
She might actually agree. She said that she might, if she heard that, she might actually be like, "Oh yeah."
I'm telling you, it's a thing. So Joey, if you could just give us those 5.
All right. Man, it's been so long since I read that book. All right, it's gifts, touch, acts of service, words of affirmation, and what is that last one?
Quality time.
Quality time. Thank you. Quality time. I knew I was like missing an important one. Quality time. And so the idea with I think it's Gary Chapman is his name, the writer. His thought is that we should actually be able to function and communicate in all 5 of the languages. However, many of us have, or he was that all of us actually have one primary language by which we actually communicate. And in some cases, some people have sometimes even 2 primaries, if that even makes sense, primary. Anyway, his theory is that basically, if you don't understand that person's love language and you're not communicating love through the language that their primary is, it's almost like the equivalent of like you not loving them at all, at least in their mind. They are not going to feel the love that you are trying to give because you are not communicating in their primary. So his idea was that, one should be aware of their own love language primaries and which ones they also function in as outside of it, because not only do we have the primary, we have others that we probably tend to move into as well that are secondaries and tertiaries and things like that. But to be clear about that, so not only to know your own love language, your primary, but to know others' love languages as well, so that you can be clear about what works for you, number one, but number two, so that you don't waste time doing all this other stuff when the person really needs to see something else. And I mean, I've been guilty of that in my own past relationships where You know, there were some people who really needed things like words of affirmation. I learned that my primary language is acts of service. If you need something, I'm gonna try my best to make it happen for you or help you out in whatever way I can, because that's just my love language, you know. And so I wasn't always the most verbose when it came to specifically expressing affection and love and things like that. So I was more about an action person, because I was under the impression of like, you can say whatever you want, it don't mean nothing unless I see your actions. And so I never really did a whole lot of speaking, but there was, you know, one person I dated who that was their jam. They loved words of affirmation. And so they would always feel like I don't really care about them. And I'm like, you can't see all this stuff that I do for you though? You know, and I'm feeling like, well, you know, something must be wrong with you. You can't see that I'm doing all of this stuff to show you that I love you, but you're harping on the fact that I don't say a particular thing and it wasn't until years after I'd moved past that relationship and read that book and was like, oh, I didn't understand, you know. So what, I was doing all this other stuff. Fact is, I wasn't doing this one thing that they needed, you know. And so that's the idea of the whole 5 love languages. But the idea is that you learn, be clear about yours, you function in that, but then on top of that, you start to master all of them, you know, bit by bit.
I just wanted to say, you guys are great. I love this. This is great. Everything I'm like, okay, so I'm reading a book, but it definitely touched on what Joseph said about what problems are you willing to take on. But that was just like a whole sidebar. But I feel like I do agree with Joey. My love language would have been quality time.
That was really a good book. Joey, I definitely appreciate you telling me about that book. It was really good. I read it and it
Dang, I
really
put everybody onto that book.
No, it's because of you,
No.
man.
No,
And boundaries.
son.
Okay, I'm gonna read that one because I don't know about that one. I'm gonna read that one. But yeah, like that book really it really made me look at myself like, wow, okay. Yeah, so I learned a lot from that book. I mean, a whole lot about myself, about how I was with other people, whether it's friendships, whether it's relationship wise. Like, I think it was like an awesome book. I mean, man, my mom's church had they had the author come to their church to actually like do this whole thing about the book. But it was like, it was really awesome. Joey, you did good.
If you really want to know what your love language is, they actually have a test that you can take on his website.
I did that, yeah.
On the 5 love languages website, and they'll show you exactly which ones you do, not just your primary, but all the ones that you really do in the order of how you value them.
Yeah.
And it's really eye-opening, actually.
Yeah, I did that one. Mine was, I think it was words of affirmation, quality time, and then gifts was number 3, which is funny because I suck at giving gifts. So I didn't get how that was number 3. But those, I knew the first 2, I was like, okay, yeah, that makes logical sense. So the last question is to wrap this whole thing up, is something that I think is important for us to talk about, is knowing when a friendship, relationship, or in general needs to end. You know, we touched on it briefly, but I think it's important to know what I'm trying to figure out how the right wording to say this, but yeah, I guess what really helps you guys to know like when a relationship needs to end.
Well, I guess
I'll start off.
That's a. Are you talking about friendships? Are you talking about relationships?
You can cover both. If you can.
That's all right. All right. I'm talking and thinking. On a friendship side, I guess it would the same rules apply. I guess is how they apply is what the differences would be. I think that as a friend, if a friendship needs to end, you have to ask yourself, is this relationship edifying to my life and to the forward motion of my life in the most positive ways? Furthermore, are we? It's not always that you have to agree on everything, but fundamentally on some certain values and certain. No, that's not what I want to say. That's not quite accurate. This is a hard one. I think I'll stick with what I had said before. Is are you both going down the same path still? Number one. Number two, is there a mutual respect or not? Does the relationship, like I said, edify you and the other person? Is it functional? If the answer is no to those, then you kind of have to call it quits. Concerning relationships, I think it's the same thing fundamentally, but I think even more important than that is that's a hard one, because now you're digging into real personal stuff now. What I would say when it comes to relationships, there are some. I'll be transparent, as transparent as I possibly can, at least. There, in past relationships, I have prolonged being in them for a myriad of different reasons. One of which is that I'm thinking, well, this is a good person and I'm a good person, and why can't this work? A lot of it was I'm waiting around hoping to see something that makes me feel like we good, and that this we can move forward into the, as you call it, the next stage of whatever the relationship might be. And figuring that, I could solve the problem, or that eventually maybe over time some solution will come and we'll be able to, fix it. And we'll be good. And the fact of the matter is that, and I learned this actually lesson, well, not only in my own experiences, but it was summed up very well by one of my brothers, who I was like, man, that's kind of savage. But the fact of the matter is that it's real. You have to be honest about what you like, what you don't like, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And it doesn't matter how seemingly surface or frivolous or insignificant it may be. The fact of the matter is, if it doesn't jive with you, it doesn't jive with you. And you have to be okay with that. And you have to be honest about that. And sometimes we ignore that because we're trying to make something work. Fact is, if you know that it ain't working and you can't figure out why it ain't working, then maybe it's just not it for right now. If you can't say it's a full-on yes, that you still can see yourself moving forward with the person, it's probably best to just say, move on. If you can pinpoint why and it's something that's fixable, then go fix it. If you both want to do that. But if not, chances are, cut it, because it's a waste of your time and it's a waste of that other person's time. And all it does is that it adds baggage, not only to them because you decided you were being too indecisive about what you were, hoping that something would change, but it also adds baggage to yourself. And just because, the relationship needs to end, it does not necessarily, it's not necessarily a reflection on either one of you two's character. I think the other aspect of why people are trying not to break up, because it looks bad if you break up, or it means that somebody messed up, or somebody's a bad person. Maybe it's just as simple as that you two are not compatible. And it's nothing personal, and that's okay. It's okay if it doesn't work. It's okay. It really is. And I wish that people would have, I wish that I would have been told that a little bit earlier, like for real. Like, no, it really is okay if it doesn't work. I kind of did, but society will make you feel like if you break up, somebody's horrible or something's wrong. It's not the facts. Be honest about where you are, who you are, what you want, what you need. And, I had another friend who has this quote. He goes, "Any question is no question at all." And I'm learning more and more that tends to be the truth. If you can't give a solid yes on something or a solid affirmative response to where something is going, for real, cut it. I wish I would have known that before. I did not know that before, and I realized the damage that it does long term for others and for myself. And I hope that it's also why when I have conversations with other people, I never tell them what to do in relationships, but I also tell them these are the things to consider. Because, don't waste your time making a mess for yourself and the other person. That's pretty much what I have about it as far as, I hope that answered it.
I think Joseph took it and ran home with it. But I would definitely say what I'm learning now with friendships is if we can't just if we don't have that like respect for each other, then we're good. Not that we're walking away, but if it's for me, it boils down to boundaries because I had to learn boundaries, and also the book that I'm reading, even though I choose not to tell the title, it also is helping me with I think what Joseph said the first time with problems. What are you willing to carry? Like I guess what are people have problems and people come with their baggage or whatever, but what are you willing to walk with? What are you willing to not help carry, but what are you willing to endure with that person? So I feel like for me it boils down to boundaries. Like if we can't, friendship or relationship, if we start like blurring boundaries, then I feel like it's something that we should talk about, and it's something that we have to talk about. And if we can't come to healthy boundaries, or we can't establish a healthy boundary where you feel like okay, because it's not for me personally, it's not just me, but if I really choose to be your friend, or if I really choose to be in a relationship with you, and I tell you, hey, this doesn't work for me, or I'm setting boundaries and they set boundaries, and we start like kind of blurring boundaries. Like I'm learning that now. I'm not saying I'm perfect at that, but if we start blurring those lines, then I feel we have to have that conversation. And if that conversation doesn't work, then you no longer, or we no longer are healthy for each other, because I am a believer in just kind of, I'm learning to be healthy, and what healthy looks like to me, and what healthy may look like to my friend, or whomever I decide to be with. It's boundaries for me. I'm learning to have clear boundaries, and learning to stick to my boundaries, because sometimes I'm guilty of kind of going, okay, but it's not. No, stick to your boundaries and stick to, because that's how you protect yourself, and that's how you keep yourself like for me accountable. Like no, if I say this is what we can't, not, I don't want to do this, or this is no, then if the person can't respect it, or if the person's not willing to change for it, then you gotta cut it. Like, bye. It was fun, but I'm good. And it's no hard feelings, but because it didn't work, it's no failure of it's we're not failing each other, or it's just we're not compatible, or our relationship is just it has ran its course, and we're done. Sounds cold, but
I mean, for me, I have gotten to the point where I just won't accept anything, whether it's in a friendship, whether it's in a relationship with a boyfriend, whether it's family members. I just won't accept it. So I'm okay with walking away. Like it's not where I feel like there's an attachment, so I have to be there. No, I'm okay with dismissing myself and walking away and letting it be. I won't hate you. If I see you, I'll say hello, but I'm okay with just walking away and letting things be. I had to learn that because it was very hard I'm a person who holds a lot of stuff in. And if you do something to me or I'm feeling any type of way, I will hold it in and I will just be this totally different person. But I'm okay with walking away and letting things be let wherever they are, that's where they're gonna stay. I'm just gonna walk away. I won't tolerate just anything. You cannot just tell me anything and I'm okay. No, if it's something that I'm not going to deal with, I'm not gonna deal with it. And that's fine. That's how I won't argue with you. I won't go against you. We don't even have to have a full blown out conversation about it. Okay, that's how you feel. That's fine. I'm gonna walk away. Um, it's hard. Sometimes it is hard, but I don't know, maybe it's because I'm getting older. My tolerance level is like very slim. But yeah, I'm learning to walk away, whether it's in whichever relationship that goes on in my life. I'm okay. Now, this is where I'm married and stuff. Yeah, I'm gonna work out all of that stuff, but just other just things that's just really doesn't because I deserve my peace. I deserve my peace. And I feel like other people deserve their peace. So I won't wrestle with my peace and wrestle. No. You're disturbing something? That's all right. You can go. It's fine. Matter of fact, I'll go. I'll walk away. But yeah, that's pretty much how that goes.
And I'm gonna end it on this note, going back to what Joey said. You got to know what you're willing to deal with and what you're not willing to deal with, and know the difference between them for every relationship that you have. Again, thank you guys so much for being a part of this. Joey, Jen, Ro. That sounds like a band name, Joey, Jen, Ro. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this conversation. Thank you guys again for watching on either Facebook or YouTube. Thank you again. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, follow us on social media. Follow us on Instagram again at St. Mark Youth Power. Thank you guys so much. And please check back on the 20th. Nope, that's a lie. On the 26th for the next episode. Thank you guys again so much.